Sunday and Pride Month. Woohoo! Had to have one more sweet coffee, sorry. But before we get started, let's pray. Holy, I thank you for this day, and I thank you for these people. I thank you that even though there are a million other places they probably could have been, they chose to be here. I ask that you bless them. I ask that you help all of us be exactly who we were created to be, and help all of us find our path and walk it in proudness, with courage, knowing that we are not alone. You are with us every step that we take, in us, through us, around us. We are your people. Bless us this day. In your many names we pray. Amen. So last week I talked about King Saul, and it was depressing, sort of, the beginning of it. And I said we would come back to talk about David, and that's where we're at. We're going to talk about David. In 1 Samuel chapter 16, that's the David and Goliath story. And everybody knows David and Goliath story, right? So I don't have to recap it. We're good. Yeah. Cool. But in verse 7, wait, y'all, I messed that all up. Whoop, rewind. Chapter 16 is not David and Goliath. Chapter 16 is David gets anointed to be the next king. Whew. Should have drank more coffee today. And in verse 7 of that chapter, Samuel the prophet is the one who goes to anoint David. Samuel goes and the brothers start coming through. And Samuel gets excited because they all look good. They're all good looking. They're big. They're muscular. And so Samuel every time is like, this is the dude, right? He's the next king. And God will be like, no. Okay. This is the guy, right? Look at him. He's gorgeous. Look at those chiseled abs. This is definitely the next king, right? God says, nope. Samuel's like, dude, what are we doing? That's all of them. And you don't want any of them. Samuel turns, looks at Jesse. Do you have any other kids? Because none of these are it. Jesse says, yeah, there's David. He's out in the fields. Well, bring him here. Because, all the good looking ones are no. So let's try this kid. So they get David. They bring David in. David steps in front of Samuel. And God says, yeah, that's him. And Samuel's like, okay. But God had to remind Samuel in verse 7, do not consider his appearance or his height. God does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance. God looks at the heart. It's Pride Month. And we talk about being proud. And we talk about, living authentic lives. And we talk about our history. We talk about Troy Perry. We talk about the Stonewall Uprising. We talk about all of it. But one of the things we never really seem to talk about is the fact that most all of the people that we get to talk about for our historical purposes were people that the world looked at and said, nope, not you. Nope, not you. You don't get to sit at the table. You don't get to preach sermons in our church. You don't get to be a part of our club. All of them were pushed to the margins. And it kind of makes you wonder, where were all of those so-called spirit-filled people? Where were the prophets that God talked to? And why weren't they hearing God say, hold up, no. I don't do that. I don't judge based on outward appearances or what you think you know about a person. I don't choose people on those things. I choose people because of their heart. And y'all, we all have beautiful hearts. Yes. Every person in this room, every person that watches this later, you were made in beauty and wonder. You're like the most amazing creation. That's right. And each of us have gifts. David also had gifts. Chapter 17, the for real David and Goliath story. David goes to take food to his brothers who are on the battle lines. Goliath is standing out there yelling all kind of bad things at Israel. Little old David's like, why aren't y'all doing nothing about this? Why y'all letting him say these things? And then, they're like, well, look how big he is. He's really, really big. And you got to wonder, did David go, we're not supposed to look at the outward appearance. You're not supposed to get stuck because of what a situation looks like. David was different. David looked at Goliath. Everybody else looked at Goliath and they were scared. They just wanted to hide. David looked at Goliath and said, he's so big, there's no way we can miss. It's an opportunity. He's so big, we cannot miss. Verse 11 says, Saul and all of the Israelites were dismayed and terrified, shaking in their boots. But then there's David, who sees it differently. And David says to Saul in verse 32, let no one lose heart. Let no one lose heart. Maybe that's our job. I shared this morning on Facebook 2 quotes. Anderson Cooper, which apparently I deleted. Oh, there it is. Anderson Cooper said, I think being gay is a blessing. And it's something I'm thankful for every day. Do you know how many people still do not consider being LGBTQIA plus a blessing? Do you know how many of us are still stuck thinking all of that stuff that they tried to cram into our heads back when? Do you know how many of us still go, well, I'm probably not good enough because I'm LGBTQIA plus? Do you know how many of us are so worried about what that rest of the world says? Yeah. We can't see that we're kind of like David. We get to look at the world with different eyes than everybody else. Right. We get to look at it and see the rainbow. They look at it and see the black and white. Yeah. We get to look at it and see opportunities. Well, this hill is so big, there's no way we can't all get up it and back over it. And then when we go down the other side, we're going to be moving real fast. Yep. That's how we see it. That's how we should see it. We're the people that should be saying to all the people around us and all the ones to come after us, don't lose heart. There's hope. That's what David gave the Israelites. Hope. Because he looked at Goliath and he was like, I got this. Everybody else was scared. David's like, I got this. So David goes and they try to put armor on him and they try to give him a sword and he's like, I can't do this. It's bulky, it's heavy. This isn't how I roll. I just need my slingshot and some stones. And the king is like, what do you mean? And David's like, look, king, I've killed a bear. I've killed a lion. That was my instrument. It's going to be my instrument today. That's right. The world was trying to make David be somebody he wasn't. Mm-hmm. And David boldly said, nope, that ain't me. I'm going to do it my way. That's right. LGBTQIA people kind of tend to do the same thing, do we not? Mm-hmm. The world tries to say, I need you to fit in this box. If you're like Christy, you kick the box all the sides out and go, what box? Mm-hmm. It ain't here no more. The world tries to say, well, you can't do this. Because you're LGBTQIA. Mm-hmm. Well, why not? Well, because we say. Mm-hmm. Well, why do you say? Who made you the decider of these things? That's right. Who made you decide that I'm less than you? Mm. Just because I don't love the way you love. Mm-hmm. David shared his authentic self. He knew that they weren't going to think he was bright. His brother had already said, boy, take your butt home. So he knew when he stepped out with just the slingshot and his little stones that everybody was going to be like, oh, God, just start planning his funeral now because this is over. Mm-hmm. And when he stepped out, he knew Goliath was going to be like, what? You sent a flea. You sent a flea to me. He knew these things. He steps out with his slingshot, with his stones, and he launches the stone, and boop, and the giant fell. The giant fell. Sometimes you think that you're just one person and you're not big enough, strong enough to change the way the world is. You think you're not big enough to make an impact. David was a teenager with a slingshot, people. What do you have?
God.
Okay, you have God. You also have those big, beautiful, amazing hearts that you've been blessed with. You also have the ability to know what it's like to be left out. So therefore, you don't leave people out. You know what it's like to be told you're not good enough. So therefore, should we not be people who goes and finds all the people that have been told you ain't good enough and bring them all in and give them a home, give them a place? There was a story in the Democrat on the 25th about a gay couple in Killarn Estates. They hung the pride flag, the progressive one. They hung the progressive pride flag on their house a week or so before Pride, preparing for June, Pride Month. And the Homeowners Association comes and knocks on the door and says, I'm going to need you to take your flag down.
Get real.
It's in the Democrat. You can look it up. I don't tell lies. They go and tell them to take the flag down. And at that point, the couple say that they felt rejected. Now, they had been excited when they bought the property. They loved the area. They had made friends with some of the neighbors. So they felt rejected. They felt hurt. But then a little old lady that lived a couple doors down comes to see them and says, hey, I noticed your flag's gone. What happened? And they're like, well, the HOA came and they said we had to take it down. And so we took it down. And she didn't like it. She's one person. And she's older. I don't remember if it was 60s or 70s, but she's older. And she was like, nah. So Granny goes, sorry to offend you by calling you Granny if you see this. Granny goes and Granny gets a flag of her own and Granny hangs it up on her house. Granny don't stop there. Granny goes to the neighbors and says, hey, we should hang flags up in support of our boys because they done them wrong.
Amen.
And so more people hang the flag up.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Here's the most important thing to me. Across the street from their house, there lived an African-American woman. And when she was interviewed, she also ended up hanging up a flag, by the way. But when she was interviewed by the Democrat, she talked about how when they first hung the flag up, how seeing that flag, it just made me feel safe as a young black woman. I don't know if any of you have been in Killarn Estates, but the last time I was in it, it was very, very white. So she felt safe because she realized, oh, there's some other people who know what it's like to be pushed to the outside. There's some other people who know what it's like to be left out. There's some other people that understand oppression. There are some other people that understand the struggle.
Yeah.
I have people there across the street. It was as if the boys stood on the front porch and said, girl, don't lose hope. Don't lose heart. You can do it. We can do it together. Now, Killarn Estates is having a meeting on July 13th where they will decide what happens about flag hanging in the future. Let's hope it turns out right. Point being, when we live our authentic selves, when we really own it, when we view who we are as a blessing and not a curse, when we find the strength to see us the way God sees us and not the way the world sees us, we're capable of giving hope.
That's right.
We're capable of showing the way. She felt alone and then she didn't. So think about Stonewall. The Stonewall Uprising started on June 28, 1969 and went on for a few days to July 3rd. But in 1969 New York City, it wasn't like now. You couldn't walk down the street holding hands. You was not going to walk down the street waving no flag. You wasn't going to wear this mask. You weren't going to do anything that identified you. At least if they had their way, you weren't going to do anything that identified you as a homosexual. And homosexual was about the only word they were comfortable using. That and the F-bomb, not the F that ends in the K, the other one. And those were their words for that community of people. So you didn't get to go to the nice places and hang out. You had to go to darker areas. You had to go to places owned by the mafia, where they sold overpriced beer that wasn't really good and watered down drinks that weren't really good. I would not have survived. And they had to go there to be in community because it was safe, because they were all together in one place, but they were also hidden from all the people who thought they were deviants. all the people who said they were no good. And it's that environment that we're in when Stonewall Uprising begins. Because see, the police would just come and harass them. They would raid the bars. They would harass them if they saw them on the street and they looked a little bit too girly or a little bit too manly. They'd harass them. And that night the cops came, but then it went differently. Because some people decided they were going to be like David and they were going to live into who they really were. They weren't going to quietly get into the handcuffs and get into the paddy wagon. They were going to be loud. They were going to cause a ruckus. And they were going to draw attention. And as they drew attention, the crowd outside grew. The cops get scared. The cops hide in the bar. So now the cops are in the bar with the few people they've got arrested, plus a reporter. And the crowd is outside, and the crowd's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Why? They had hope. The people resisted. They got loud. They said, no, you're not going to keep doing this to us. We are human. We have rights. We deserve to be treated with respect. And it gave all those people watching hope. It gave all of them a glimmer of what could be. And they said, you know what? They're right. So let's get loud and rowdy with them. And they did. For a few days, it raged. But they did the same thing David did. They looked at the obstacle. And they're like, okay. I'm going to take my tools and I'm going to approach this. And I'm going to conquer this. Let no one lose heart. Both of those stories, the Tallahassee Democrat story about Killarney Estates and the Stonewall Uprising story, are about hope. It's about saying that people belong, that they shouldn't be ignored, that they shouldn't be treated poorly. My favorite quote in a documentary that we watched about Stonewall was, there was this guy, and he said in that moment, during the uprising, something changed. Something happened and came into existence that he had never had until Stonewall. You know what he said he found that night and in the nights that followed? Family. He found his people. He found people that loved him. He found people that supported him. He found people who were like him. And they were out on the streets together, all of them, saying, we're not going to be treated this way anymore. We're going to live our lives, and it's going to be fine. You're going to get used to it. A year later, they had the very first, what we would call Pride Parade. And we've been rocking and rolling ever since. But there's still work to do.
Yes, it is.
We still aren't where we should be. We still have people who say that LGBTQIA people are less than. We still have people that want to raise a ruckus every time they have to be seated next to an LGBTQ person on a plane, on a bus, wherever. There are still people showing out. There are still people speaking hatred from the pulpit, telling their congregations that all of the people like us with our big, beautiful, glittery hearts are deviants who don't belong.
That's right. Yep.
But y'all, we're the people that say, don't lose heart. Don't lose heart. And when David said, don't lose heart, and he went and he faced Goliath and he took him down just exactly the way he said he would, he comes back, and in verse 52, all the men of Israel and Judah surged forward with a shout. They got excited. They saw that it could be done. They saw that life could be different. They saw that there was hope. They saw that there was a chance. But if David had not lived into who he was, into what he was, would they ever have had the hope to run forward into their future? If Stonewall, if those people had just, okay, we're just going to go quietly, how much longer would we have sat and waited for the gay liberation movement to begin? A long time, you're right. And in Killarney Estates in Tallahassee, Florida, ever known that happened? My guess is no. But now because of her and because of that couple and because of all the neighbors who jumped on the bandwagon, in the Tallahassee Democrat, which is read by most everybody in Tallahassee, anybody who might not have been out, who might have been afraid to come out, read that and said, there are people who love me and support me, and they're in Killarney Estates. Killarney Estates, you're about to see a real estate boom. That's what I think.
Oh, yeah.
But we can't live into our true selves. We can't be authentic. We can't be hope bearers if we view our lives the same way they do. Those who view it poorly. Not everybody does. If we can't look at ourselves and go, we are blessed.
That's right.
If we can't be proud of these awesome big hearts that we have, and the way we love people, and the way that we bring people in, and the way that we don't let people feel left out.
That's right.
If we can't view that as the blessing that it is, and we can't be proud about it, how can we give it to other people? How can we shine a light? How can we give hope? If we're still maybe possibly thinking we're not good enough, we're second class. We, they might be right about us. All of those things that we hear and that we internalize. If we're holding on to those things, we can't be the people saying, change is coming, don't lose heart.
That's right.
We can't be the people that say, hey, there's hope, and then everybody runs towards hope, if we're still also holding on to all of the yuck. Blessed and proud. Tim Cook said, so let me be clear. I'm proud to be gay. And I consider being gay among the greatest gifts God has given me. Do you view who you are as the greatest gift God has given you? See, you're quiet because some of you don't. You don't think you're a gift to yourself or to anybody else. So I want you to listen to me. You're wrong.
That's right.
You are a gift. A fabulous gift. You are a gift to every person in this room, every person in this community, but you're also a gift to yourself.
That's right.
And every time you look at you and you want to view you with the eyes that anybody else wants to view you with, I want you to stop. And I want you to remember the instruction that God gave Samuel. Don't look at them the way you humans look at them. Look at them the way I look at them. See what I see. And what I see is the heart.
That's right.
We can be proud and we can be blessings to one another. But we can also be blessed.
That's right.
Because there's hope. And if it weren't for the Stonewall Uprising, if it wasn't for Troy Perry, if it wasn't for all of the people who came before us, would we have known hope? I don't know that I would have. I don't know if other people would have. Stonewall Uprising gave that man a family. In 24 hours, boom, he went from having no family to having a family. But it also did the same for us. Because from then forward, we started building. And what do we say here? We're more than church. We're a family. Don't lose heart. And don't lose hope. You were made to be exactly who you are, and you need to live in it. You need to live it proudly, boldly, and know that you are blessed, and you are a blessing to me.
Yes.
Knowing you, every one of you, is a blessing.
Yes.
And I'm a better person for knowing every single one of you. And this world that we live in, it's better because you're in it.
That's right.
It's better because you're living, breathing, laughing, fighting, yelling, whatever. It's better because you're here. And Thrive wouldn't be here without you.
Amen. That's right.
You're the ones that make us. And Holy looks at every single one of you and sees nothing but good. So be blessed. Be proud. And be visible. Live it. Show the world. There's hope. Because I'm living as I am, as who I am, as who I was made to be. And if I'm doing it, you can do it. So just come on along with me. And all the people say,
Amen.